we bought a deal under the assumption that the T12 and the rent roll were accurate. And 99% of the time they are. So I don't want to scare people. But it turns out he'd fraudulently sold us this deal, so much so that he had paid people to pretend to live in the apartments when we did the walk.
Welcome back, everybody. This is another episode of the Saucetown Investor Podcast. I am your host, Matt Cox. We are joined by an amazing guest today, our first international guest in podcast history, which I'm excited to talk about. Our guest today, he's an investor, he's a coach, and he is the co-founder of Wild Oak Capital. He started in single-family homes, and over the past 12 years has grown his portfolio to more than 1,000 multifamily units. Originally from Colorado, Eric now lives in Spain with his family, where he continues to invest and coach other motivated investors through his mastermind, which we'll get into. It's called Cash Flow to Freedom. Great name. His focus is on helping people create more time and freedom in their lives by investing in real estate the right way, with a strong mindset and the right support. I am joined from Spain, as I mentioned, by Eric Nelson. Eric, how you doing?
Hey, Matt, man. Good. My pleasure to be here. Thanks for waking up early.
Absolutely.
One challenge living overseas, right?
Yeah, so tough living in Spain, right? Brutal.
Yeah, no complaints. Don't get me wrong.
Yep. Great to have you here, man. So, but before we talk about real estate on this podcast, and we'll get into that. But start off, just tell us a little about your backstory, where you grew up. I know you had a career before real estate, so tell us about that a little bit, and then kind of carry us into how you first got started in the real estate space.
Yeah, for sure. I grew up in Colorado. I did what a lot of people I think do, is basically like went to college for the thing that people told me I should, I guess. I mean, I don't know how to describe it, but I happen to be good at math. And so all my teachers were like, you should be an engineer. And that's kind of what I did. And truthfully, even in college, I didn't really like it. I was just like, well, I can get through these classes and there's a lot of smart people around me, really, really smart people. So I guess I'll just finish and do this, right? So I went to school and I got a degree, and I don't regret any of that. Don't get me wrong. I just wish that I would have known there was other options, other majors, like things like that. I still believe strongly in college, so I'll come back to that. But anyway, so graduated, got an engineering job, and like a lot of people, I was like, man, this is not super duper fun. Like punching the clock, kind of like just working for someone else. So I was like, okay, well, let me start my own company, because I just had this entrepreneurial spirit. So I started an engineering company with a friend of mine. We had some success. I mean, we had a pretty successful business, but I still felt like if I wasn't there, I was sort of trading time for money still. And so I kept always in the back of my mind, I was looking for like this, is there another way to make money where I don't have to be location dependent and also like could build for the future? And so it doesn't take you a lot of research to find investing, and you find a lot of, I mean, there's a quote, I don't know how accurate this is. You hear this quote a lot. 90% of millionaires make their money in real estate. So that kind of caught my eye, and I just started looking at how to invest, right? So we were young, we had no cash, so we started buying single families with creative financing. It's kind of how we got our start. So I would ask pretty much everyone I could find who had a house for sale or for lease if they would owner finance it for us. And I got a million no's and a few yeses. And that's how we got started, was buying single families in our neighborhood. And honestly, what I was doing is like, this is funny to date it. I was pushing our baby around. Like I would walk around with my son, who was a baby, and just like in the stroller, and any for rent sign I saw or any for sale sign I saw, I was like the original driving for dollars, like pushing my son.
Yeah.
And I would just call on all these for rent signs. I would get on Craigslist, call those, back in those days, that was more like common than marketplace. But anyway, so that's how I got my start. And we built up a decent portfolio that I was managing myself. At one point we had like 11 units in Durango, Colorado, where we live. And I was like thinking I was, big shot, right? Like I was managing these units, felt like we had a pretty good retirement built up. And I met a couple guys who were doing multifamily, like, man, it doesn't have to be so much effort and work, and you can afford a manager. And there's all these reasons why now I understand I like multifamily better, but I wouldn't take it back. And so that's kind of how I got my start. And then once I heard about multifamily, I was all in. Like I was like, okay, what's syndication? cool. What is, partnering with people? What does it look like to buy multifamily? What does a loan look like? All that stuff. I just dove way in, and I hired a coach. And I think that was a very important piece of my journey, was to find someone ahead of me doing what I wanted to do. And I paid him for 4 years to coach me through all kinds of stuff, right? So I believe in coaching and mentoring a whole lot. But anyway, so then once I did that, I mean, partners, and yeah, we've kind of been on this upward trajectory since. We can talk about market swings. 2024 was kind of a tough year for most people, so we didn't buy much, for good reason. The market was kind of tough, but we're still at it. We're going now strong. We have a couple under contract and going hard. So basically, long story is once I had built up enough units, I was sort of doing that on the side. I just told my business partner, "Hey, man, you can have the business. I'm gonna walk away and do real estate full time." And he's a good friend of mine, but he's like, "Dude, you're crazy. Like, you're gonna not have a job, right?" So I dove in full time, and that was cool. And then we realized, well, we don't have to live here, and we love where we live. Don't get me wrong, but we're like, let's show our kids some of the world. So we decided to move to Spain about a little less than a year ago, and so we've been living here. Our kids are in school, and we're loving it. It's kind of a cool change of pace. We won't be here forever, I don't think, but we really like it. So long intro, man. Hopefully that wasn't too long, but that's kind
No,
of
that's great. No. So I want to get into what you're doing today, as well as I want to know more about the Spain move. But just to take us back to the start. So real quick, what year did you buy your first deal?
Well, I mean, honestly, this is a funny story, but I actually bought my first house when I was in college. So this is like 2007, which, as you can remember, was not great timing. But I bought a
Right.
house with my brother. And back then, dude, that's why the market crashed, because we were in college and we had no business getting a loan. But
Yeah.
the bank was like, sure, you have kind of some income, buy a house. So we ended up buying a house and renting it out to our buddies and fixing up the house. It was like our first sort of flip, so to speak. So that was like a college thing we did. The market crashed during that time, which, so we ended up making a little bit of money, not much. We were lucky to kind of get out of that fine. But it taught me a whole lot about things. It taught me about being a landlord, taught me about fixing up a house. I mean, I learned how to do all the stuff I know how to do, like handyman wise, I guess you could say. But then after that, I was like, okay, that was a lot of work and no money is kind of how my vision was. So I sort of put it on the sideline, especially since I was focused on engineering. So really the next time I bought a house was in 2013, it was our own house. And then I started buying rentals. 2016 was where I started. And then I started in the syndication around 2019, 20. And that it's funny how things are. Like, when I was really interested, it was basically right around COVID time. And what was interesting about that was, once everybody was forced inside, I just like forced myself to listen to a billion podcasts and read a bunch of books. And it was, I don't want to say a blessing, that's not the right word, but it was a weird blessing in the sense that, like, it got me some free time to study. And that's really, so I would say towards the end of 20 was when we started going strong. First acquisition in 20, we bought 4 in 21 and just kind of rolled from there. And that's kind of the timeline.
Yeah, that's kind of my story with COVID too. I was working a corporate sales job, and COVID hit, and I was selling to airports, and as everybody knows, the airport world shut down. I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to get a commission for a long time. And I just started started. I think a lot of our listeners have listened to Bigger Pockets. So I started listening to those like crazy, reading books, just started doing it. And that's a common theme with, people like yourself, successful people that I talk to. It's not, a lot of this stuff is not rocket science. It's all there in a book. It's in a podcast. You read it. But the key is to take action on it. So did you just kind of, and there's this idea, right, for people who are just starting in real estate, or most people only buy a couple houses in their lifetime. It's like, I need to save up this huge down payment. I need a ton of money to be in real estate, to buy deals. And it certainly helps to have money, but you don't necessarily need it when you're starting out. Did you just read about seller finance and you were like, okay, cool, this is how this thing works. I'm going to go call 1,000 people and hope that 10 of them want to do it? Like, take us through that a little bit.
Yeah. In fact, I have a cool story about, we'll kind of sort of like tell the story a little better. I'll tell a story of a deal I found. So, sorry, I just had pneumonia, so I had to mute. And
Oh,
anyway,
man.
yeah, I'm finally better. That's why I just went for a run. I'm like super pumped to be healthy again. So sidebar, be grateful for your health. Like,
Yeah.
it is enormously valuable. So Anyway, let me take you through a deal. So we had a few rentals at this time. This was like 2020, or sorry, 2018 or something is when we very first started. And to answer your question, yeah, I was basically like, I read about seller financing and then I dove into it and I realized, oh, it's actually really simple. To your point, none of this is rocket science. It really isn't. I was like, the seller is just being a bank. They're just letting you give them payments over time, and they have a lien on the property too. So when I sell people on seller finance, meaning when I ask someone to do that for me, I say a couple of things. One, there's some tax benefits. We can get into that. And two, you don't get this giant chunk of money right away that you don't know what to do with. You get these payments over time, and you don't have to deal with the rental. And then if for some reason I default, or my dad likes to say it's pretty morbid, if I get like run over by a bus, what happens, right? They get the property back. So, and a lot of times you've put money into it. So I think seller finance is a really, really valuable tool, and it's really not complicated. So I'll tell this story. There was I was walking my son, like I was saying, and I saw this older gentleman putting a for rent sign in a yard, and it looked like a multi-unit property. And so I just walked up to him, introduced myself. I said, "Hey, it's a beautiful property. I see you're renting it. Can you tell me what you're asking?" It was like this old sign he'd never changed. Like you could tell he hadn't changed rent in 10 years. And so he told me, and we got to chatting, and I was like, you know what? I'm not looking to rent, but I would really love to buy if you're interested to sell. And he was like, yeah, I think I would. That sounds nice. He's like, I don't want to deal with it anymore. And I was like, that's amazing. Okay, well, and I said, I'd be super interested to buy it. I said, have you ever heard of owner financing? He's like, no, what's that? And I kind of walked him through the process. He's like, sounds pretty good. I was like, okay, well, take some time, talk to a lawyer. I'm not a hard sales guy. I don't think in this scenario, I don't think hard sales probably going to go very far because you're just going to push people away. But that's my opinion. Anyway, so he's like, okay, cool. And I called him in a few days and he said, yeah, I talked to my lawyer and said it sounds pretty good. And I said, all right, well, what do you want for the property? And he said, well, how about $1 million? And he kind of chuckled a little, like that was a ridiculous number. And in our market in Colorado for 6 units, which is what it turned out to be, that's actually a really good deal. And I was like, look, if you want $1 million, I'm not even gonna like say no to or change the number whatsoever. However, back to this owner finance thing, I don't have a lot of cash. Would you take a really low payment, a down payment? He's like, yeah, I think I would. Like it was just kind of a match made in heaven. And so I ended up buying $1 million property with 6 units for $30,000 down, which is 3% down. And he loved it. Like his payment, because his rents were so low, his payment was actually more from me than he was getting from a rental, and he had to do anything. So we bought it. We did quite a few fixes. There was actually a down unit, got it up to working, got all the rents back up to market, and we were making really good money. And he was super happy, right? He was making a monthly fee. Here's the coolest part of the story is I was running a meetup in Durango, and someone approached me and said, "Hey, I'm looking to buy a few units. Do you know anyone selling a multi-unit thing?" I said, well, I hadn't thought of it, but I'd sell this sixplex I have. And I was like, I think I was like 1.15 or something. That was what I threw out. He's like, yeah, I'd buy it right now. And I was like, okay, well, let me check with the seller first because I don't want to do wrong by this guy who was financing it for me. So I called him. He's like, hey, would he just want to take over the note? And if you're a buyer, like buying a sixplex and there's a seller finance in place, all you have to do is take that over. That's an amazing deal. So it was a win-win-win. It's like the original seller was pumped because he could just keep his note. The new buyer was excited because he didn't have to go to a bank. And sorry, the door just slammed. And then I was excited because I'm like, I can sell this property without having to wait for a long closing period either. So we ended up making about 100 grand in a little over a year on this 6 unit. And all we had to put in was about $40,000. And again, it's a lot of money, but if you were to partner with somebody, to your point, you don't necessarily need a ton of cash to get started.
Yeah, that's and that's
long of a story for you, Matt. Sometimes I can get into it. I get pretty excited about real estate. So
no, I'm loving it. Yeah, I love hearing about deals. So and that's a great lesson for everybody. There's sometimes there's this idea that stuff it has to be like a zero sum game. It doesn't. Like this old landlord wins, like you said. That's a great selling point for seller finance is I'm going to pay you more on this loan than what you were getting in rents, and you're not going to have to deal with any maintenance, tenants, etc. So then you get the win, you get the deal you need with low money down, and then the next guy gets the win too. He gets to take over that node. So you make, what'd you say, over 100K in a pretty short amount of time here on one of your first deals. So take us to, I mean, so you build off this, you're buying single family homes, you buy this sixplex, and now you're syndicating. You know, you've got over 1,000 units. I assume you didn't get all those by pushing your son around on a stroller across the country to find apartments. Because I did look, you guys are buying stuff everywhere. So talk about the transition and kind of mindset shift from being sort of a lone wolf and buying these on your own, to getting into the syndication game and obviously scaling pretty massively in a pretty short period of time.
Yeah, I love that question because I think mindset's everything. And let me back up really quickly and say the reason I sold that sixplex is right around the time I heard about syndication. And I was making okay money, like I would say 90 grand, something like that. Like I was making good money doing engineering. And I had these rentals kind of on the side. And so when I made 100 grand on that one deal, I was like, oh my gosh, this was kind of an enormous amount of money to be made on one deal, right? And it was like, now I have some cash to get started with this business idea I had, the syndication business. Now, just a caveat, you don't need that cash. It was just in my mind, I thought I did. And so it was nice for me to have this propellant, like, okay, you got some money, now go full steam.
It was like a
So for
comfort thing
me,
for you to be able to leave your
yeah,
job.
it was kind of like, hey, if I'm going to step out and like create a website, start marketing, it does cost a little bit, right? I'd like to have a little money in the bank. So that was kind of the convince her for my wife too, like one, that real estate works, and two, like got a little bit of money in the bank to get started with this other idea. So that was kind of the timeline, and that was the reason I sold. So I was like, I wanted some seed money. Looking back, my wife always says we never should have sold that, but that's true of any real estate. But anyway, yeah. So for me, I was kind of in that mindset, and I was kind of like a little bit anti-partnership because I was fearful that, I don't know, like I thought I could do it all and I didn't want to partner with someone and mess up. Like a lot of people say they don't want to partner because they think they could do things better. My real aversion to partnership originally was like, what if I lose that partner's money? That was like my fear. And that's still my fear in taking on investors, and something I just have to continually be working through or just be okay with, I guess you could say. So once I realized, okay, real estate, at least commercial real estate, is a partnership game, it's a team sport. That was the major mindset shift I had. I like, okay, I need to find someone who has the opposite skill sets that I have, and I need to be willing to partner with someone. And so this meetup I was telling you about, I've been running for a little while now. I'd met my now partner Shane there, and he's just an incredibly sharp guy, just really, really easy to work with. We kind of have complementary skill sets. And so he was my first partner, and we were like, this is great. Over time, we've grown, and so we have now more partners than we did, but that was the original start. And the major mindset shift was, okay, one, yes, let's say you're buying an apartment building that's $5 or $8 million. That's an enormous number, but it's kind of the same business model that I'd been doing. It just scaled up, right? So I don't personally believe you should just jump straight to multifamily. I do think you should have one or two deals under your belt and really understand real estate before you do. And so I was kind of lucky in that sense that both of us had done that. We had a history of some single family stuff. So once we went to multifamily, we're like, okay, we understand real estate. We understand what this looks like. We both work well together. And so we ended up buying a couple of deals together early on, shortly after. So the major mindset shift was, just because it's a bigger number doesn't mean it's impossible. And the second one is, partners are everything. The way I look at it now is completely 180 from what I used to. It's incredible to have a great partner. You can go so much farther working together.
So talk about, you mentioned Shane, and you guys have opposite skill sets. I think this is really important for people to know, because partnerships can be absolutely amazing, or they can be bad too. That does happen. So talk about the specifics with you and Shane, like your skill set versus his, and why you think it works so well.
I love it. Do you know Jamie Gruber? He's a
Yeah.
Okay. So Jamie actually said this really well once, and it stuck with me. He and I were chatting about partnerships and stuff, and he was saying really most syndicated deals or most large multifamily deals really kind of need three skills, so to speak. One would be someone who's semi-outgoing, who can talk to brokers, get some deals, talk to insurance people, talk to property managers, and then eventually, usually, talk to investors, right? They're usually the person who's sort of the face, or kind of like the brand face, I guess you could say. And that was the skill set that I carried. Was I love talking to people. I love talking real estate. I do have an engineering background, so I can also talk numbers. So I think investors kind of like that a little bit. Same goes for brokers. I love calling brokers. Some people they hate cold calling. They hate like picking up the phone. I don't mind it at all, right? Like you can tell by the way I was pushing my son around. So that was the kind of skill set I brought. The second one you're going to need is someone who's like back of house, who's like, okay, we need lending and they need 17 million pieces of paper and we need to keep this all really organized. And we have all these investors and we got to track all of their social security numbers safely. And we have distributions and just someone who's really good at detail and math. You definitely need that person. That's Shane. So he's just an incredibly detailed guy, very sharp, really organized. That's what I needed. And then a lot of times the third person you need is really a capital raiser, someone who can really bring some money to the deal. We didn't have that early on, so we both just had to kind of hit the streets. But if you have those three things, that usually makes for a great partnership. Now, it doesn't have to be three people. It could be, like I said, two people, could be seven people. Four of them bringing a lot of capital, maybe some investor communication stuff. One person maybe is the broker person, whoever, you get the point. But those three things really kind of need to come together to make a really great deal, in my opinion.
Yeah, and talk more about the capital raising piece. I'm actually kind of doing. Probably a few years behind you. Bought a lot of smallplex and single family homes and stuff, and I'm starting to raise money on bigger deals. And it's like it's a little asking people for money is hard. It's scary sometimes. I think a lot of people just absolutely won't do it. So when you started out raising money, talk about how I know you had this meetup. I won't answer your question for you. You had this meetup. How did you? What was your day one when you were like, I got my first deal under contract and we need to raise X amount of money for this? What was like step one? Who did you go out to?
Cool, love it. So couple of things, and I want to talk about SEC rules, and I won't go too deep because it's super nerdy, but I do want to cover it because I think it's incredibly important when we talk about raising capital. There's some extremely important rules you have to follow. So I'll come back to that. Please don't let me forget. But this is credit to my coach. Basically, he was like, you need to start raising capital way before you have a deal. And what that means is simply telling people what you're doing. So a lot of people, and I was the same way, I was really shy about telling people I had these rentals. In fact, most of my friends when I was doing engineering had no idea I was investing in real estate. Like I would just like quietly buy these rentals. And if they were at my house and a tenant called or something, I'd be like, oh yeah, I got to go check on this rental I have. And then some people are like, what, you have rentals? Like, I don't know why. I was super shy and quiet about it. I just didn't want to brag, I guess.
Yeah.
But the honest truth is you need to tell people, hey, I'm buying real estate and I'm having some success. And if you want to place capital, I think I can make some money on your money. Like the other mindset shift is interesting how you said it was asking people for money. That's how most people think of it. A giant mindset shift is just telling people, I'm going to make money on your money. There's always risk, right? There's always some risk they could lose some capital. There's always some risk they don't make as much as you think. But generally speaking, if it's a good deal, you're doing a service. Like a lot of people who are high income earners, they just have a 401k or an IRA or something, and they're just stuffing it away. They don't even know where it's going. Most 401k people don't even know where their money's going, which is not necessarily a bad thing. It's just more people are busy working on other stuff, or they're stacking it in some savings account or something, right? So if someone says, look, I've got 100 grand in the bank account, I don't know what to do with it. And you're providing the service of, sweet, let's work together, partner together. When you invest in a syndication, you are part owner in the deal. So you get a share of that company and you get a share of depreciation. It's really, really cool tax benefits. And I'm going to give you a return on your money if everything goes right. And so that's what I tell people is, like, if I'm in your shoes, Matt, start telling everyone. Start telling everyone, hey, I love real estate. This is my passion. By the way, I'm making money on most deals. And I'm also interested to partner with people who want to jump in. And most people are like, oh, sweet, I can invest in real estate. I don't have to deal with all this stuff. I don't have to deal with tenants and toilets break-in and math. I don't know how to analyze a deal. I don't even know what that looks like. So if they're like, sweet, you take my money and I'll just kick back and take the returns, it's actually not asking for people money. You're kind of providing a service, assuming you're doing a good job, which I'm sure you would. So that's what I tell people is step one is start doing it early on. Now, fast forward to when we had the deal, to like kind of really answer your question. Once you have a deal, you have usually around 6 weeks where you're like, we have to raise somewhere between $1 and $4 million. And how do you do that? Basically, what I did was I just went back through my old emails. I went way back, high school, college, went into Facebook, found all the people that I'd known, and I just reached out and I said, "Hey, I am investing in this deal. Here's a little bit of the success I've had in the past. I'm looking for people who would like to invest with me and take a chance. If you have any interest, will you sign up for my email list?" That was the original like number one step. So I probably had like 300 people or something like that. Most people said, "Sure, yeah, throw me on there." A few said, "No, thanks, no problem," right? Like, that's cool. But it takes a little bit of uncomfortable effort to say, I'm going to put myself out there as a real estate investor person, ask people if they'll join your list. And now you've got an email list. Then when you have a really nice looking deck of the property, you can email everyone that you asked that deal. So that would be one, like step 1, 2, and 3 is just start building an email list of people who opt in to hear about what you're doing. The other thing you can do is beforehand is start that email list beforehand, right? Like made the mistake of not having it ready. Like doing it all over again, I would say start telling those people now, build a good email list, build a nice looking brand, then start sending a monthly newsletter. Just say, hey, here's the properties I own. Here's the thing in the news. Just start telling people about stuff that you're doing and grab their attention. And pretty soon you've got like an investor list that you didn't even know you had, And so that's how I did it. On the first deal, we ended up raising quite a bit of money, and that was a huge confidence booster. I will tell you it's a challenge right now, especially with market volatility. It is a challenge to raise capital. So it's not an easy thing to do, but if you're willing to put yourself out there, you're in sales, like you were in sales. You could easily ask people, right? Or talk to people about it. It's a similar thing. And I think you would find that it'd be easier than you think.
Yeah, that's so good. I think a lot of people can relate to what you were saying about like posting. Like if I could go back in time, I would have started from my first deal posting everything on social media. It took me years to do that because the same thing you said, like I didn't want to come off like braggy or like look at me, but it's how the game works now. Like if people don't know what you're doing, they're not going to work with you. They don't know you exist as far as real estate is concerned. So that's great. And I just jotted down your email list idea as well. That's super smart. I want to we'll get back to real estate, but I want to hear about Spain a little bit. So give me the whole rundown. Like when did you start thinking about living abroad? How did you land on Spain? Take us through the story because you haven't been there that long.
No, we haven't. Well, I think I'll just say I'm kind of an adventurous person too. So like back in 2015, we took a year off and drove a car from Colorado to the bottom of Argentina. This is before we had kids. So we just
down to what's that called? Tierra del Fuego is the furthest
exactly.
tip of
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So we drove all the way there from Colorado, took a year off and did that. So we had this like adventure that we're like, wow, that was cool. That was like life changing. And when we came back, we just sort of like started having kids and kind of fell back into life, which is totally fine, right? But once we realized, oh, we could live anywhere, we were like, all right, well, we like to really learn Spanish. So we just started looking at anywhere this Spanish speaker, what turns out is a giant part of the world. So we were looking in like Chile, we're looking in Colombia. We actually went and spent a month in Mexico to try it out. I love Mexico. And we were like, actually, we'd like to be in Europe. So basically honed in on Spain. So we're like, want to learn Spanish. We want to be in Europe. So we got a country. We're like, okay, cool. At least we got that. And then we started honing in on where we want to live in the country. And quite honestly, weather was a big factor. And I hadn't thought of it, but we met a couple who'd lived in Pamplona, Spain. And they're like, yeah, it's a lot like Durango and there's cool mountain biking and stuff, but it's also super rainy. I was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that. Like I'm a Colorado guy, like I'm a super sun guy. I was like, okay. So I started looking at weather, and where we live is the Costa Brava, like super sunny part of Spain. I was like, okay, that's cool. And then actually Go Abundance guy told me about the town we live in, which is about 40 minutes south of Barcelona. He's like, it's super family friendly, super chill, kind of small, local. I was like, oh, it sounds really nice. So I came here in February, a little over a year ago now, and checked it out. And I went to Barcelona, drove up and down the coast. We knew we wanted to be on the beach, by the way, too. So that was like pushes us to like certain parts. Um, and I kind of fell in love with this town he told me about. So like a friend of a friend of a friend through a mastermind told me about this town, and I came alone. My wife had never even seen it, and we're like, okay, let's go. And then to do all the steps you have to do, it's like anything else. Like getting the visa, it's painful just because there's a lot of paperwork, but it's like anything. It's just annoying, right? You have to like
Mhm.
go to the consulate, you have to like send in some paperwork, pay a lawyer. Like it wasn't super fun, but it wasn't hard either. And then finding a rental was kind of a challenge because trying to convince someone like we're gonna be there and we're gonna pay you and we're real people was kind of a
Yeah.
challenge from being because we wanted to have a place to live before we got there, obviously. So anyway, all of those steps like kind of just eventually started falling into place. And then for us, because we have kids, the school was like a huge factor. So we found a really nice school that's nearby, and that was a huge factor for us. So we're like, okay, like once August hits, we're gonna move here, start kids in school. It's an international school, so they speak English throughout the day. And you know, say what you will, we didn't know how long we'd want to be here, so like some people say it'd be better to put in local school and just like trial by fire with Spanish. But for us, we figured it'd be better to have the education in English and then let them learn Spanish in the street, and they have Spanish classes. But anyway, sidebar. So for us, we just kind of honed in here. We got lucky a little bit and we just took the move. So we ended up applying for a 3-year visa. And so we ended up getting that. So we think we'll be here for 2 years and likely come back to Colorado, but honestly, a little bit up in the air at this moment.
Hey guys, we're taking a quick break, but before we get back into it, if you're enjoying this episode, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. It really helps us to keep bringing you more valuable content. And if you're on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, don't forget to leave a review. Please, it makes a huge difference. All right, let's get back to it. Cool, man. And this is something I think a lot of investors and just people in general probably fantasize about, right? Like, whoa, cool. This guy's making passive income. He's living in a cool foreign country on the beach. I mean, how is it? Has it been just completely awesome? Have there been challenges? Are you doing midday tapas and sangria? Like, what's the vibe? What's been hard and what's been awesome about it?
Yeah, I love that question. I mean, um, yeah, there are some days. So here's the goods and bads. The amazing is we do love living in the beach. Honestly, Spanish culture fits our style. They're super chill. People are really laid back, super friendly. So that's been really nice. The beach is amazing. So we do spend quite a bit of time there. The frustrating thing is that you literally don't know how to do some things. Like I'll give you an example. Like I got a speeding ticket from a camera, and I got this letter in the mail, and they speak 2 languages here. They speak Spanish and Catalan, and it's all in Catalan. I'm like, what is this? I don't even know what this is. So luckily we have some Spanish friends, and I sent him a picture. He's like, oh, okay, well, you have to go to this place and you have to write this letter that says you're the driver of the car. And then they'll mail that thing to this other place, and then you have to go to this other place, and then you have to go there and pay your ticket. Like it's all like government stuff. You're like, well, I would have never known how to do that. And it's kind
Yeah.
of time consuming, things like that. I think most people, if there's a complaint about Spain, it's that like things move slow. The government is the government, just like anywhere. It just moves slow, and there's a lot of paperwork. And then siesta is a real thing. So like from 2 to 4, if you want to do pretty much any business, good luck. You'd be better just to go have a beer and wait until 4. Like stores are closed. So there's things like that I would say, you know, you either can look at it one way, like that's frustrating, or just look at it the other way, like this isn't my culture. This isn't my sort of I'm sort of a visitor. And so I'm just like, I'm just going to assimilate, stand. It's not the same as like the efficiencies of home, so to speak. But be frustrating at times. Like to spend 17 hours to pay one speeding ticket it was old, right? But ultimately, to answer your question, it's been really awesome. Like our kids have really enjoyed it. We've loved like learning Spanish, speaking Spanish, the beach lifestyle. I'd never lived on a beach, so for me, it's like still kind of like kid in a candy store. Like I still just enjoy it. To your point, like we'll take a bottle of white wine to the beach most weekends and just kind of hang out with the kids. The other thing is like I'm working American hours, so I work in the evening. So my wife and I have like all day together. Kids are at school, so we just cruise around and yeah, like have tapas and check stuff out. And then usually like if I'm working or I have calls, like right now it's luckily 2:30 here, but this is by far my first call, and this stuff usually comes later. So there's pros and cons, but I would say I wouldn't take anything back, and we're really loving it. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And you said you have two kids, right?
Yeah, so they're 7 and 5, so they're in like what would be kindergarten and second grade. And it's like an international British school, so it's been really cool.
Cool. And do you so I'm asking this sort of for my own use. I just got engaged 2 weeks
Oh,
ago. Do you
congrats, that's
talk a
amazing.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, we were down in Puerto Rico and Miami, so I can relate. I'm back up in New York now, so I can definitely relate to what you're saying about wanting to thinking living on a beach might be nice sometimes.
Yeah.
But talk about do you is your wife involved in the business at all, or how does that relationship work? And then also, like, do you enjoy? Are your kids old enough to kind of know what dad does, or be able to talk to them about like, hey, we're buying this apartment that's 3,000 miles away from here? Are you able to do any of that stuff with your family?
Yeah, so my wife, she does all of our updates. So it's actually a shocking amount of work because we have like 14 or 15 deals now going. So every month we send an update. So she's kind of in the numbers, and she's like building nice looking updates and email and all the right people and stuff. So that's incredibly valuable. So she's really in it. In fact, like sometimes she'll catch stuff that I had missed, which is hugely valuable, right? Like she texted me yesterday and was like, hey, did you see this expense on this property? And I was like, no. And it turns out it's a mistake, like things like that. And it wasn't a mistake, but it was just a calculation error. But I'm like, oh, okay, well, that would have looked really bad in an update, right? So it's been nice to work with her. There's challenges with working your spouse always, but we've kind of set some clear boundaries of who's doing what and when and all that stuff. As far as the kids go, yeah, I think they have a general idea. I think probably the better or the thing I talk to them more about is just money, the concept of money, the concept of making money, concept of taking care of it, concept of being generous. Like those are the things at this age that I'm talking about. They know that we buy real estate, they have the idea, but I don't think they really know what it means. And I don't necessarily want to press it just yet. But there's a couple dads that I know that have like dad groups, and they focus pretty heavily on like how to communicate with kids around money. One thing that like comes up sometimes is, okay, if you have some money, or let's say you have some wealth, how do you transfer that wealth to the next? There's a lot of research that says the next generation that gets wealth, it's gone by the next generation after that. So really teaching money skills, those kinds of things are what I'm going to be pushing on. And then my wife and I, we like to be extremely generous. So like, if, if there's some good reason to give money away, or maybe even not a good reason, that's what we want to teach our kids. Like if you have some money come in, let's say you have an allowance, or sometimes they've sold books or whatever, right? Like set aside a pretty good portion of that to give to somebody else. And that's a really cool thing to teach kids, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's really cool, and that's excuse me. We'll talk about GoBundance a little bit, which both you and I are part of, and one of their pillars is giving back. How do you choose where you want when you're donating to something, or giving your time as well? You can give time or money. What do you give to, and how do you make those decisions?
I mean, I think everyone's different. So this would just kind of be my style. I always give, not always, I give to kids. So I was the president of the board of the Boys and Girls Club in Durango for a couple years, just because they served kids that really needed good after school care and a place for mentors and blah blah blah. So like I gave a ton of my time to that organization, just an example. And I also give to certain missionaries. So I have friends that are missionaries here in Spain, and we give to them. And like I guess what I'll say is I have a relationship with them. I know their style. I know that they like act out of pure love. They're just amazing, amazing people. So I'm happy to support a lot of that type of stuff. Things come up though, right? Like a friend of mine's mom had cancer, and he started to GoFundMe. And I was like, all right, well, how about this, dude? Like, I'll match any donation you get. Like, that's just an example. Like, things for me, it's like a heartfelt thing. I think being generous sometimes is a little selfish. And I think it's okay to say that. Like,
Yeah,
it feels really good to have been blessed with some money to be like, cool, like, let's give some of that away and bless someone else. Like, it feels amazing, and you're doing a good deed. So I view it as a little bit selfish at times, where I say, if that makes me feel good and makes someone else's life a little better, that's a total win-win. And I think some people are like, well, that's selfish. I'm like, well, maybe so, but that's how I choose. So we give to kids, and we give to some missionaries we know or causes that come up where we're like, okay, we can make a difference here. So long answer again. Sorry, I'm like pretty verbose, but hopefully that rings true for somebody.
No, it's funny you say that because I always laugh when somebody will give some celebrity or business person will give away a bunch of money to a really good cause and it'll get advertised and everybody go, oh, they just did it for the attention or they just did it because it feels good. And I'm like, so they still gave away the money. It's still helping
So
everybody. The
what?
money isn't worth less because it made the person happy that they gave it away. Like this, everybody wins here. It is. So I mean, volunteering, it feels good. Giving money away, it feels awesome, and that's totally okay. Everybody can be happy here.
Yeah, I agree.
So hey, back to some of the deals you're working. I reviewed your website and some of the stuff you've been working on. I noticed you guys are buying stuff kind of all over the place. I think you did a big deal in Pennsylvania. There was one in Little Rock, Arkansas. There's a few in Texas. I mean, you're all over the place. What I guess how take us through your deal finding process. Like I know you're talking to brokers and things like that, but how do you find these at a deal level, but then also at a market level? Where do you choose? How do you choose where to invest?
Man, I love this question. Like, amazing question. So kudos to you. I had a podcast for a couple of years, and it's hard to come up with like stuff like this. And you're obviously talented. That's an amazing question. So
Oh, thanks,
let
man.
me let me give it a caveat. We only are lead sponsors in 3 markets: Victoria, Texas, Tulsa, Oklahoma metro area, and Western Arkansas. So if Wild Oak Capital is the lead sponsor, we're finding the deal, underwriting the deal, all this stuff. We only buy in 3 markets. And so if you look at my website, to your point, we have deals kind of all over. That's a little misleading. Like, I only talk to brokers in 3 markets. I'm only buying in 3 markets. And when I tell people that, I preach this in my mastermind. I'm like, don't go all over the place. Don't buy in Florida. Don't buy in New York. Don't, because you're never going to know the market.
Yeah.
So what we've done is we've had key partners. So the one in Pennsylvania, for example, a good friend of mine, Jason Perro, lives in that area, and he's been investing in real estate for 20 years. So he finds these deals, or they usually actually come to him because he's been doing it forever. And then he needs people to help him with certain stuff. So in our case, he liked the way we did updates. He liked our investor style. And he's like, hey, can you help with investor communication and raising capital? And I'm like, dude, Jason, I would love to work with you. I've known you for a while. Like, he's a kind of a semi mentor of mine. I'm like, yeah, definitely. So we jumped in on a couple deals up in that area because first of all, he's vertically integrated. So he has a management company. They're doing everything when it comes to like on the site. We're just helping him with some other stuff that we do well. And so I would never look in that market personally, but I'm totally happy to partner with someone who has a million units there and knows the market like the back of their hand. So that's kind of a different thing. What I would tell people, like if you're asking, how do you start in a market? This is a funny thing I say. I said, hundreds of markets in the United States that work. You basically take center America. So take out the edges, and I mean all directions. The north is too cold, in my opinion. I don't like freeze thaw cycle. East is too expensive. New York doesn't really work. Florida gets hammered by hurricanes, and the same for Gulf Coast. Throw that out. West Coast the same. I would never buy in California for lots of reasons. I love that state. I would never invest there. So you got this big swath of Central America. There's a million markets in there that work. So basically, start throwing darts or start looking in places where you have a relationship or you like the city. For example, I love Tulsa. It's my favorite market. So I just started looking there. So that's step 1. Step 2 is start calling brokers. And then the most important step by far, everything else you can throw, I said, out the window, find an amazing property manager. That is the end all be all for being good at multifamily. So if you're going to vertically integrate, meaning you're going to manage your own properties and have your own team, that's great. I don't want that. I had no interest in that business. So we found an amazing property manager in Tulsa. And I'm like, push all my chips in on that city because I like the metrics, I like the market, but I love our property manager. So if anyone's listening to this, here's one tip: find an amazing property manager. And they say, well, how the hell do you find that? I'd say, okay, call 10 brokers in that city. So let's take Kansas City. Get on Crexi, get on LoopNet, and look at all of the brokers who are doing deals. All of the first 10 you find, say, hey, I'm looking at this market. What do you think of it? Send me some metrics. What are the goods and bads? And then the most important question you can ask is, who's the best property manager in your city? And if you ask 10 people, 7 of them will say one person. That's the person you hire. So, find a city that has job growth, population growth, big enough that it has enough jobs, all the kind of standard metrics you hear, but then ask every single broker who's the best property manager, and then you've got yourself a market. And then start telling brokers I'm buying in this market. And then you're kind of off and running. That's like steps 1 through 6 of how to get started in multifamily. Then you got to learn how to underwrite, but that's tomorrow's problem.
That is that's absolute gold. I saw a guy, he's a syndicator in Oregon where I invest. He posted a thing yesterday about, we get caught up in the aspects of like raising money and underwriting the deal and finding the deal and all that, which are all really important. But one of the things people neglect to really consider sometimes is the operations. Like the operations will make or break you. You talked about finding an amazing manager. But I assume, are you the guy, are you the asset manager? Are you the guy that's kind of managing the manager, if you will? It sounds like they're awesome, so you probably don't have to manage them too much, but is that you?
It was for early on. So for the first 4 deals, it was. Now we've brought in a 100% asset manager. Her name's Bonnie. She's incredible. She's super, super detailed as well. She loves it too. Like it's her thing. She's like super into asset management. So she does the asset management now. Early on, it was me. So I trained her a little bit. She also is like a go-getter. So she took a bunch of classes and stuff, and she just like ran with it. So she's way better than I ever was. But I did for the first 4 or 5 deals, and it does take work, right? You really are, like what I say is a property manager is on the ground. They're doing lease ups, they're doing evictions, they're doing fixing stuff, they're repairing stuff. They're, leasing takes a lot of effort, right? There's screening tenants, all this stuff. The asset managers at 10,000 foot view. They say, okay, we have $500,000 in CapEx money to spend on this project over the next 2 years. What are we going to spend it on? What is the most return for our investor buck? Let's start trying stuff. So this is my opinion of asset management is let's fix up a unit like super, super nice and see what we get for rent. And at the same time, let's just paint a unit and see what we get for rent. Like that's just one example of asset management where a standard manager would say, let's put the same tile, same paint, same stuff in every unit, and let's do that. I don't agree with that process, but just generally speaking, an asset manager is like, okay, would a playground bring more tenants? Would a dog park be a nice benefit for more tenants? What things are tenants looking for? Lighting, faucets, paint, carpet, like what are the things that would help make it a nice place to live and at the same time have the benefit of higher rent? Those are the sweet spots. So as an asset manager, you're trying to do that. The property manager is really just trying to keep it leased up, things repaired, kind of taking your word for what's next, so to speak. And you're the person who's saying, put in the dog park now, please. And okay, let's put in a playground and can you get 3 bids? Like that's kind of the asset manager's job. And then beyond that, you look at the numbers. So every month I look diligently at every number of every property and I'm like, okay, where are we in where we projected versus where we are now? Some are higher, some are lower. Why? Why are we doing great? Why are we not doing so great? And then we have to tell our investors about that. And we do monthly. We're super, super honest. I mean, we're like, here's what's going wrong. Here's what's going well. Here's what we're doing to repair the good stuff or bad stuff. Here's what we're doing to like enhance the good stuff. And I think that's the asset manager's job. And it's a lot of work, but if you're really good at it, it's a really valuable skill.
Yeah, that communication piece I feel like is people just good or bad, people just want to know what's going on. And that's really interesting what you're talking about, these little value add pieces. A lot of our listeners are like, they've bought single family homes and small plexes and things like that. And you might kind of think like, oh, like a dog park at a single family home, like kind of, okay, cool. Maybe you raise the rent by $100, but you get into the space that you're in where you're trading on cap rates and all of a sudden you have 50 units that are going up by $50 a month. I'm not going to do the math on that right now, but you're talking about a massive increase in the value of the property for something you might only have to spend. I don't know what a dog park runs these days, but you get my point. Right? You can make small tweaks that make massive increases because these assets you own are trading as businesses. They're not trading as single family homes. They're trading on cap rates. So that's a really cool piece for our listeners.
Yeah, one other thing I'll add too is like little personal touches. Like we're we are sort of selling housing, right? So little personal touches go a long, long way. The best tenant is a current tenant, meaning if they can renew their lease, that costs you $0 and zero time. So let's make it an amazing place to live. So every month we do like tenant parties. We'll like rent a taco truck, or like Christmas, we'll like give out gifts, or like back to school time, we'll give like kids school supplies. Like things like this make it a more of a home and more of a community, and people are more willing to stay. So like, yes, we're a business. We're in it to make money, but we're also providing a place to live, and we're trying to make it as nice of a place to live as we possibly can. The cool thing is those two blend together to typically make more money. So that's one huge piece too people don't think about, is like, it's not all about money. It's a lot about emotion too. And if you can make it a nice place, people will just happen to stick around, which is a huge bonus for both people.
Cool. So you've talked a little bit or a decent amount about your mastermind. And I know, like we touched on earlier, a lot of this stuff around the math and finding deal, it's all in books, and you can find this stuff. Like we said, it's not rocket science, but you're very focused, at least from what my understanding in your mastermind, on the right mindset. And I think that's what separates people. Like we said, anybody can go read these books. It's the mindset, and it's taking action. So tell us a little more about your mastermind. Like, who would be like your ideal person to join your mastermind, and why?
I love that question. Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge proponent of education in general. So you're right, you can go read a book. But if you can be in a group where you're reading the book, you're like, I don't really understand that. And you could type into a mastermind, you get a response from 6 people in like under an hour. It's hugely valuable, right? So that's kind of the thinking of the mastermind, is like, we're all in this together. We're all winning together. We're all sometimes struggling together. That's really the goal of it all, is to like be in the room together. Let's say you get a deal and you're like, shoot, I have a deal. I don't know how to raise capital, but that other person does. I wonder if we can partner, right? So that's kind of the concept. Um, I hired a coach, like I said, early on, but I wished that I had a group. I wish that I was in a group where I could have said, hey, what do you think? Or hey, can you partner with me on this? Having a coach is nice. It's amazing. But it's the one person you go to, and I'm like, I really need a partner. And he's like, well, I guess you're going to have to ask around. I mean, like, it's hard, right? In a mastermind, you have education, and you also have the ability to ask questions and partner and all that stuff. It's kind of a cool thing. To answer your question about avatar, so to speak, like who would be a good person to join this, it's kind of what you described about your listeners. And I'm not here to pitch. I'm just here to educate. But I will say, like, if you've bought a house or two and you're interested in multifamily, or if you're interested to scale that a little bit, we don't all do just multifamily in the mastermind. There's some people in there who are wholesaling, people who are flipping, but it's a group of people who want to grow, who want to scale. And one big benefit is like you can learn with other people. So it'd be like if you've done a deal or two and you want to grow, that's a perfect fit for you.
Cool. And talking about being in the right groups and being surrounded with people who maybe are further along than you, or have done things you haven't done yet. I mean, I'm a new guy in GoBundance, which we're both a part of. You've been in, I think you said, for 4 years. Talk a little bit about GoBundance, like why you joined, and what it's sort of brought to the table for you.
Yeah, I originally joined because I met Brandon Turner, who everyone knows from Bigger Pockets. I met him at an event years ago, and I had him on my podcast. This was a while ago, and I asked him about GoBundance, and he's like, "Yeah, man, it's really cool." Basically, just gave the same pitch I did. It was like, it's really nice to be in a room of people who are really driven in certain areas of life. Also have these like pillars we talk about, meaning life is more about other things than just money. Like usually people in GoBundance have some sort of wealth or some sort of financial success, but also want to be a better father, want to be a better husband, want to be more fit, want to be more generous. Like those things really resonated with me. So I joined that group because it was just another room where, to your point, lots of people in that room are way ahead of me too. And that was the room I wanted to be in. I was like, okay, that person, and again, it's not about money. That person's worth $10 million. They've done something financially right. I would love to talk to that person. And when you're at GoBundance, you have direct access. So you go to the event, you sit down next to somebody. Like there's all walks of life in there. There's a guy in GoBundance who trades snakes. He buys and sells snakes for a living, and he's like incredibly financially successful. But like you'd never know, right? But you sit down next to him, you get to talk, and you're like, dude, you're in exotic snake business, like super weird. but there's also tons of people in real estate in GoBundance. So, I would sit next to people who had an enormous amount of experience and were absolutely willing to give their time and energy away to help you. That was like just a huge bonus for me. So it's nice to be in a room of people doing something similar and people who were ahead of you. So just an enormous asset. Yeah. And the other thing is we have pods, right? So like people listening, we have this group of like a small group, you could say, where we meet weekly and we just talk about life, talk about like what it's like to be a dad, what it's like to have a business, what it's like to, you're struggling with you're fighting with your wife, whatever. You can be super real, right? And so it's this group that's small that you get to connect with. And so for me, it's a really valuable place to connect with people who are driven in similar ways, I guess you could say.
Have you bought any deals in Spain, or have you thought about it at all?
I mean, yeah, if you're in real estate, you think about it all the time, right?
Of course. Yeah.
The hesitancy I have is I don't know the laws yet. So I don't know the like tax situation. I don't know like, what happens if something goes wrong. Like there's just a lot of things that I don't know yet. And so I'm an education first person. So the simple answer is yes. In fact, a good friend of mine, he's Finnish. He's married to a Spanish woman, so he lives close to me and he's constantly asking me like, "Oh, let's buy this together." I'm like, I'm interested to buy in Spain. I think it's actually a great market, but I want to really be educated first and really understand. So long answer is no, but I wouldn't be surprised if we bought something in the next couple of years just because I love it here and I love real estate. So chances are I'll probably get reeled into some deal here.
Yeah. If nothing else, buy a place for yourself to come back. If you guys
Yeah,
move back to the States.
exactly. I mean, I've thought many times about approaching our landlord, super cool guy, and our house is pretty sweet. I thought many times about approaching him, asking if he wanted to sell, but I haven't yet. My wife keeps saying, cool your jets and just stick to what you're good at kind of thing. So for now, I will.
Cool. Hey, few final questions before we get you out of here. This is a question I ask almost everybody, and they think I'm a jerk for asking it. I promise I'm not. So you're a really successful guy, obviously. Do you have a deal that was just tell us about a deal where everything kind of went wrong or that didn't turn out how maybe you lost money or investors lost money. Tell us about the deal and how you handled it. Cause I think, like I said, you've had a ton of successes, but sometimes these ones are deals that we can learn something from.
Yeah, no, I have a couple actually. I will say to date, I've never lost investor capital. Always been able to give a return, which I'm really proud of. A lot of people I know in the last 3 years lost a lot of investor money. And that's not a dig at all. It was just a really challenging time where rates, if you had a bridge loan at 3% and it jumped to 8 and your insurance doubled, all of a sudden you were just like, there's not a thing in the world I can do besides default. So that happened to a lot of people I know. And luckily I'm not in those shoes, but I'll tell you about a couple deals. One deal we bought, and I won't tell where it is just because we still own it, but we bought a deal under the assumption that the T12 and the rent roll were accurate. And 99% of the time they are. So I don't want to scare people. But it turns out he'd fraudulently sold us this deal, so much so that he had paid people to pretend to live in the apartments.
Oh my God.
So we walked through every unit. We always do. Every single unit we walk through one, we take pictures, we inspect them all. There was people seemingly living there who he had paid to move in there during our walk. So we bought a property we thought was 98% occupied. It was more like 40% occupied. And he'd been pocketing all of the money instead of paying his investors. So he has since done jail time, but we bought this property where we showed up and we're like, where the hell is everyone and what is going on? And then just to find out, oh yeah, he had not only done this to us, but also to another group. So we're like, oh no, we are in hot water here. Like, this is not what we bought. So the first thing we did, communication, was tell the investors. We're like, we are seeking legal advice on what to do here, but we also are like, we're going to put on our big boy pants and just suck it up and get this thing leased up. And it's probably going to cost some money, and we're probably not going to have distributions anytime real soon. So like the first thing we did was tell investors. Then we're like, all right, this is a kind of nightmarish scenario. What do we do? So we're like, all right, first thing we do is just basically turn all of the units that are empty, because we might as well just blast through these while they're empty and get them looking sharp and get them rented. So it was a painful 6 months of spending a lot of money and having no return, all in the agreement that we think it's going to work. And so then we got it leased up. basically it took a full year to get it back occupied, and we hadn't given any distributions for a year. But I think all the investors were like, "Whoa, that's a pretty wild story. We're not cool with it, but we understand." And so now, like, proud to say it's like 95% occupied, finally making money. We're looking at distributions. Like, it was a pretty crappy scenario to be involved with. And we just kind of sucked it up. I'll tell you one more, just as long as we're on the story. I bought a property early on, and we had one investor. This is our first like take investor money deal, and it was a single family home. And basically, the investor capital I basically took more or less was the down payment for the property. The mistake I made was I didn't have enough reserves. So the water line broke. This is a single family home. The water line broke underneath. Horrible scenario, like cost a bunch of money. I paid for it out of my own pocket, and I like swam through mud to fix this thing because we couldn't afford to pay for it. We didn't have any reserves and we were super young. So another mistake that we made, that one ended up okay too. Like over time, we made money back and we sold it and made the investor some money. But it took so much energy from me and headaches that I wouldn't ever repeat that. So if you're buying houses, if you're doing anything in real estate, have enough reserves. If you have an investor, probably double that. Like make sure that you're really taking care of investor capital. It's more important than your own, in my opinion. So a lesson would be have reserves. And then sometimes you get burned. Like sometimes that happens. And I don't want to scare people, but it just like be okay with the fact that like sometimes it's gonna be harder than you think it is. And you just have to suck it up and do it. And that's kind of the two stories I have. Haven't lost any money yet, but I'm sure there'll come a time we'll be singing a different tune. If you have me back in 5 years, I'm sure I'll say, yeah, we've lost our own money. I hope I never lose investor money, but there's some deals are better than others, and that's just a reality.
Yeah, there's always risk. That's a crazy story on the first. I've never. I feel like you've heard everything at some point, but I have never heard something like that. There's probably. I mean, you went out there, you walked the units. There's probably nothing you could have done differently. You just ran into a criminal, and I would think, your investor, that sucks. I'm sure they weren't happy, but I would think going forward, they're like, man, this guy and his company handled this the right way. They got us stabilized within a year. I want to invest in this guy's next deal because I know how he handles things when stuff goes wrong. Everybody's happy when they're making money, but when stuff goes wrong, the way you handle that's how you learn about somebody. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I appreciate the kind of words, man. It was not fun. Yeah, and I think you're right. Like, there's really not much else I could do. Like, we just got burned by a criminal. That's the best way to say it. And looking back, I mean, maybe there's some clues, but it was just a wild story.
Good stuff. Not fun, but a lot of lessons learned. Okay, I know you got a hard stop here in about 5 minutes. You've been super generous with your time. Ask everybody this question: what is something that you've read, watched, or listened to lately that you've really enjoyed? And it can be just for entertainment, or it can be business. It could literally just be a show, or it could be a business book. Whatever you want to take it.
Love it. I have never been a soccer fan, but recently I went to a couple Barcelona games. I'm like, oh, this is
yeah,
super cool, man. I'm like getting into like the soccer season and all this stuff over here. So that's one thing just for fun. I recently have like, I know Alex Hormozy's like super popular right now, but I heard him on what's that podcast called? Like, I'm going to botch this. It's like one of the most popular podcasts in the world, but basically, Diary of a CEO.
Oh yeah,
him on there, and that was a really cool one just to think about business as a whole. And then so it sort of turned me on to that Diary of a CEO podcast, which I think which really been nice. I've probably binged podcasts like 10,000 podcasts in my life, so I've listened to them all. This is just kind of a nice one to like shift into a little bit bigger business thinking.
I'm gonna download that one. I think you're the third guest I've had on who's told me they listen to that, so I will subscribe when we hop off here. Lastly, Eric, before we let you go, anything you want to plug? Where can people learn about your mastermind, or if they want to invest in your deals? And then maybe share, I don't know if you do like Instagram or where people can follow you as well.
Yeah, thanks, man. Appreciate that. You follow me on Eric Nelson Coaching on Instagram, and then ericnelsoncoaching.com. So that's where you can find the mastermind and some other stuff. I do some one-on-one coaching, but I don't do very many because I think coaching is so specific and so personable that I don't think you shouldn't take on too many. But there's some coaching there, and there's the mastermind there, so you can find it. So I appreciate you letting me plug that.
Absolutely. Well, Eric, it has been awesome having you on here. This has been one of my favorite episodes for sure. So thanks again for making time for us. I forget what time it is where you're at. It might be time for tapas and sangria. So we'll get you out of here.
Nearing there. It's 3 p.m. And the reason I got to run is to go grab my son. So my apologies. I'm more than happy to spend time with you. It's actually my pleasure, my honor. This is a cool show. And like I said, man, you have a talent of asking questions. So it's been my honor and pleasure to be on.
Oh, thanks for the kind words, man. All right. Well, I'll let you go. Thanks, Eric.
Yeah, thanks.
That is a wrap for today's episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Saucetown Investor. If you got value from this, drop us a comment and let us know your thoughts. Did you have a big takeaway? Is there a topic you want to see us cover next time? Is there a guest you want to see interviewed? DMs are open. Business is at Saucetown Properties, and my personal, you can DM me personally, is at The Real Matt Cox 4. We'd also like to ask you kindly to please like and subscribe. You can also follow along with the Saucetown Investor blog. That's mattcox444.substack.com. Thanks again, guys, and until next time, keep investing and stay saucy, Saucetown.